Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Gold Mine. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. We got Doug coming up here for the very first time, and I am stoked. So, while I am stoked, you should be as well. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff, get your emails when we go live, which is, of course, Wednesdays for The Gold Mine and Fridays for The Collective. Now, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, put them up in the comment section, and we can hit those throughout the show. And other than that, if you haven't yet, make sure you are signed up for the Reinforcement Loop. That is our weekly newsletter that goes out, and you can get your collective brain candy and in all of its goodness. It is some excellent reading. Make sure you're signed up for that. Other than that, let's get into some intros, and then we will engage the show. Doug, who are you? Where you come from? All the good stuff. 10, 15 seconds. Hit us.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I'm Doug. I'm a piglet, so I'm a cop's kid, born around Cornwallis, so really grew up within the military lifestyle. Joined the PPCLI, did some tours, Bosnia and Afghanistan, and now I'm a trauma therapist, mostly working with military and first responders. How's that?
Bam, I like it. Nice and succinct. It's good times. Sean, how's life out in the mountains? Even a knife hand.
Things are good. Dude, I was doing knife hands this morning. I've got some 240 frames per second knife hands that I shot this morning that I'll be putting up after this podcast. So you're going to get all the knife hands. Doug, good to see you. I'm fascinated to see what you have done in your current career now as a veteran. This is a topic that is close to my heart in the sense of I'm always looking to learn. I'm always interested in what's going on in this profession, as it were, this industry that you're in. So this is going to be a great conversation.
I agree. And right off the bat, I just got a quick little comment here. Dan C. jumping in here. Good morning, gentlemen. Let's kick some ass. Absolutely. You know, I've never heard the term piglet before. That is hilarious, but I have never heard that. That is a first for me. So just want to point that out. Quick little point, actually, before we dive into the show. I wanted to mention this on Friday's Collective, and I forgot to, after the show I had mentioned it, but any of the vets that are out there watching, if you guys want to be more involved in school assemblies and actually doing Remembrance Day ceremonies, check out the memory, I just forgot what it's called, but I'll make sure to hit it up and then we can talk about it later.
Speakers,
but yeah, it's like a speakers guild for any vets that are out there that want to engage. The Memory Project, that is what it's called. Look it up and get yourself out there and tell your story to the kids out there so they understand what Remembrance Day is all about. Now,
listen, if you don't mind, I'd just like to jump on that real quick because I just noticed that in my Instagram feed just 2-3 days ago. So I don't know who's advertising these things or who's pushing the word out about the sort of veteran speakers panels that you can kind of get involved in the Memory Project so you can hit the schools and all that good stuff. I don't know who's organizing it, but this is the first time I've seen it on Instagram this year. So whoever's doing it, congratulations, putting the word out.
Bam. I like it. Well, let's get into the topic because as that is getting into social media or, you know, getting the word out, that is a deliberate act. It is something that you have to choose to do and pursue. Let's dive into the topic here. Doug, why don't you give us a quick little thought? What was your first inkling when you found out the topic earlier today, deliberate acts? What came to mind?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind, deliberate acts is really kind of the catalyst for everything to happen. I mean, as an operator, so as a soldier, I mean, deliberate acts were it's kind of ingrained in us. But even as a trauma therapist working with clients, I can't do anything unless that person is willing to take that deliberate act to do something to create change to whatever. I can only facilitate it, and I see it all too often. It's often that choice point that we're waiting for somebody to take. And some do and some don't. And sometimes it takes longer for others to do than for other ones to do. But ultimately, it's about what we've got inside and needing to take action with it in order to affect change, I think.
Love that. Sean, what do you got?
Well, I didn't give this subject much thought because I was kind of going to lean on Doug and yourself to see where the conversation goes. Because, like I said, I just came off the heavy bag at 240 frames per second, super slow mode, knife handing things. And so, what has just come to mind is maybe the distinction between a deliberate act and deliberated. And so the pre-act, which is you deliberating what you're going to do. And so you can have a deliberated act where it is an intentional, thoughtful, sort of um, very engaged process where you're trying your best to deliberately create a positive outcome, we'll call it. But before you like get your butt off the chair or before you walk out the door, before you roll out of bed, like you can have deliberated. You can the pre-action is you considering what you're going to do today intentionally. It is you sitting there and maybe retroactively considering what you did yesterday, and then setting yourself up today with a deliberated day, where through deliberate acts, you are intentionally carving out milestones or positive outcomes each hour or every 6 hours, whatever the case is, however frequent you want to do it. But I do believe that there is a pre deliberated act, and that is the deliberation of the day, as it were.
I dig that. The thing that clicked in my mind when I was thinking about deliberate acts was the difference between deliberate and hasty. When you think about military operations and you're going to do something deliberate, that means there's time. Like time really isn't the biggest factor in the decision-making process at that point. You can, methodically work through a problem versus being hasty where you have to just come up with a solution, try it, see what happens, versus taking the time to think about it and process it and work through it. Doug, you got any other thoughts? Like, oh, Sean, what do you got? You look like you had a thought.
Well, just the reason that I wanted to establish the difference perhaps between a deliberate act and deliberating before you do the act, that is literally because of the infantry brain in me. I thought hasty attack and deliberate attack. And so I wanted to establish that, like, as I thought before I said a friggin' word, was if I'm most of my life is a hasty attack. I kind of like I just flow with it and I make things happen and et cetera, et cetera. But if something's super duper important, I generally don't run it like a hasty attack. I run it like a deliberate attack, which really requires a lot of pre-consideration and a lot of thoughtfulness, as it were. And so that is literally why I tried to establish that, you know, deliberated and deliberating, and of course you rolled straight into hasty, and I think there is a real good correlation between the two. However, I will add maybe just another little tweak. If I'm running my life like a hasty attack on the regular, at some point you've got to do an AAR, an after action report, and that's when you can deliberate whether the hasty is working for you. And if it isn't, then you have to sit down and start a deliberate attempt to start understanding how you best work as an individual. Maybe you're not a hasty attack guy or girl. Maybe you're a deliberate, but you'll never know until you sit down and think these things.
Yeah, I love that. I was rolling with Ace actually earlier today, and we were on the mats and we were talking about how different styles are great. Some people love to like smash pass and work physically domineering kind of positions over time, and other people like to scramble and they like to move around and dance around and find openings that way. It's such a great allegory. Doug, you got any other thoughts on this?
No, I like the way that's kind of broken down too, and it's kind of how I work, and the work with the nervous system itself is about uh, we get caught up in these narratives or these automatic responses that we sort of lean on all the time. But when you talk about sort of hasty and deliberate, when you go into deliberate, you're actually breaking it down in the moment and saying what's more appropriate for this moment. And even with jujitsu, I mean, that's totally what it's all about too, right? It's about how do you maintain your breathing, how do you maintain your self-awareness, and then how do you then come up with a plan in a sort of a regulated way in order to be able to then take action that's going to best serve you well. I think, yeah, so that pre-deliberation, as you talked about, is really about sort of calibrating to the environment, calibrating to how you are in the moment and what you've got in your environment. So I think that's really cool. Yeah, I think if we do that, we're less likely then to run on adrenaline and run with blinders on kind of thing.
I'm digging this. Sean, it looks like you got another thought. What do you got?
I do, and it's because Doug, as Doug just unfolded this a bit more, what it got me thinking about, because of course he threw in the key phrase there, the nervous system, central nervous system, and how that can be, out of homeostasis, or it can be out of balance, we'll call it. And so I do believe that if you're a person who runs your life through the hasty attack sort of process, like I've already established I do, you can't do that just frivolously. You can't do that carelessly. You can only do that after probably a very large body of work where you understand, even in the hasty attack moments, if they're every second, you understand in your core what your baseline is. You understand how to manage your central nervous system. You understand what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate for you at a either a neurochemical level or a biological level, a psychological level, an emotional level, a spiritual level. I mean, these are things that you should be considering on the daily so that you can establish your baseline over a period of time so you know your pattern. And so from hasty attack to hasty attack to hasty attack to hasty attack, you can hasty attack your entire life and be totally out of balance. And you might get away with it for a while, but eventually you'll start sizzling. And then that sizzle turns into a frazzle, and then all of a sudden there's not much left of you. And then what? Who are you serving? You can't serve yourself, and therefore you can't serve those around you. So the idea being that hasty attacks are cool, but you really have to dial into what you are, your central core.
Yes. Doug, what do you got?
No, I love that, and I think I'm hearing the language that we're typically used to using all the time. You talk about homeostatic, about balance, about finding your sort of set pattern. And so the work that I actually work in and do research on is actually called allodynamics. So it's actually the ability to fluctuate fluidly according to the environment, which gives us the ability to shift very, very quickly, but appropriately, right? And I think that's the way we need to do that. If we get stuck in these patterns, as soon as we get stuck in a pattern, it works really well. And our training sets us up to work in patterns, right? Double tap, dash down, call, observe, type, communicate, fire, right? That's a total pattern. And if we stop and think about it, we can actually get lost, and we'll probably get shot in the event of sitting there trying to figure out what we just said. But if we act on it every single time, we do really well. Until, of course, the script changes, until there's something else in the environment that we weren't expecting. We're so used to following that track plan that now we don't know how to get off it and to sort of adapt and overcome, because we're so in that rut. So that dynamic approach, which is sort of taking that, is kind of what Sean has said. In my words, it'd be like taking a moment-to-moment inventory of how I am in the moment and what my environment's asking of me to make conscious shifts and adjustments.
All right, I'm digging this all day long. I'm good to let you guys talk to each other at this point. It's awesome. Go ahead.
Well, just for a sec, then, that all of that works for me. It's literally how I run my life. But, for people who are listening to this right now, if they aren't familiar with the term like allostatic load or these various maybe scientific sounding terms, it really boils down to, in simplistic terms, it's this. Just pay attention to how you're doing right now. And as you work throughout the day, just keep checking in on yourself to see how you're feeling. And by the end of the day, try to form a pattern as to who you were that day. By forming a pattern of your day, you then need to apply day after day after day comparisons on your pattern. So you really can lock into who you are as a person. We'll call it quote unquote on the regular. Now, whatever that looks like, we'll call it X. Your X, you have to play with that now. You have to kind of understand your left and right of arcs. You have to kind of play with your extremes to see what you are capable to the left and right of arc. Therefore, you're not locked into your pattern. You understand your pattern, but you also understand that you have a footprint around that pattern that we'll call it your area of responsibility, or the area of operation that you're going to play on the 360. And so, kind of lock into what your patrol-based pattern is, but understanding that you've got a 360 footprint that you need to explore to better defend and offend the day.
Bam. This is, this is key to developing as a whole. I think in order to grow as a human being, you need to be able to recognize where you need to grow. And I think as you guys have both said, a lot of times we can fall into these specific patterns of this has worked in the past. I've created this pattern and it seems to work without any real time to stop and reassess. So for those that, let's say, they don't know how to reassess, they don't know how to stop and really think about this, or they're in the process of all the hasty attacks, they're never giving themselves an opportunity to stop. How do we get them to stop? How do we take the time in and of ourselves and say, yep, okay, I need to stop doing what I'm doing and check in? Because I think that's sometimes what it takes at the beginning. Doug, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is the bane of my work, and I mean, it's surprising when I finished my book. I've been doing this for 17 years, trying to do research and figure out how the heck we function as operators and as humans, and so my work works around what's called nervous system recalibration, and really, really quick and simple. It's really five things you pay attention to in the moment. So one is breathing. If you'll notice, your breathing either stops into the chest or in the abdomen. Rhythm is, are you frozen? Have you completely frozen in time, or are you fluid? Are you able to be flexible, and are you able to move and shift? Uh, Environment. So are you paying attention to the entire environment, or is it just, are you canalized on one specific thing? Are you got tunnel vision? Your social engagement. Are you socially engaged, or are you disconnected? And are you able to be curious? And if you can ask yourself those five things in any moment, then what you're doing is you're actually tapping into what your nervous system is responding to every moment of the day. And when you have the opportunity to look at those things, then you have the opportunity to adjust them. And when you adjust them, you're going to be operating more appropriately for that environment. So that's what I would say to that.
Sean, you got any thoughts?
Well, those are great. And I've used those in various ways myself, and I've called them various things when I've worked with other individuals. I'll try to take all of that, and I don't want to like disrespect what Doug just said by simplifying it to such a degree that I'm going to, but this is how I try to explain it to some folks from time to time. And Chance, you've heard me say this thousands of times to people on the podcast, and I just simply call it a pattern interrupt. And so you need to understand your pattern, whatever your pattern is. And Doug has laid out a number of ways that you can understand what your pattern is right now and throughout the day and throughout your life. How to improve that pattern, how to reduce that pattern, how to play with the pattern. That's all good stuff. But when it comes right down to it in simple language, you have a pattern. And occasionally you have to pattern interrupt. I've run pattern interrupts. So I can't even count that high. How many pattern interrupts I've run on people. My own athletes, over 15 years of high performance coaching around the world. Every single athlete, pretty much every single day I was running pattern interrupts on. Because when you've got high performers or low performers, it doesn't much matter. Whoever that person is in front of you, they have a pattern. It is a fixed pattern often. And so generally speaking, it typically takes a person like me or Doug or Chance, just someone to walk up on you and listen to you and understand you and feel your pattern and then pattern interrupt you just to move you in your day. You're moving your day for sure, but you're moving your day in a way that you understand. And sometimes I like to move your day in a way that you don't understand, but the way I understand. And sometimes it takes an outside agency or external variable to kind of nudge you in a direction that breaks your pattern, a pattern interrupt. If no one's pattern interrupting you right now, it is your responsibility to pattern interrupt yourself. And I'm going to give you a perfect case study right now. As Chance knows, he put me on the reinforcement loop newsletter task almost 25 weeks ago. It was just like a good idea. And hey, do you think you could do a newsletter? Not understanding how much bonkerific work it would cause me to have to do. And so now I do a newsletter every week. And so 36 hours ago, I woke up and I thought, what? I've got an idea in my head and I need to do it now. So I created a new version of the newsletter. It's 3 hours of our podcast per week distilled down into a newsletter. And now I've taken the newsletter and distilled it down into 8 carousel slides for Instagram. I didn't want to do that. I can't even explain how much work that created for me. I did not want it. But here's the thing. I woke up a couple of days ago and I thought, I cannot get this idea out of my head. And I had to do something about it. And I didn't like the idea of how much work it was going to cause me, but I did it anyway because it broke me out of a pattern that I was in, which was called 2 podcasts per week, a newsletter per week, and check, I'm good. But I just needed a little bit more. And I know what I need. I need to be pushed. And if no one's pushing me, like Chance is saying, make a newsletter, eventually I fall into a pattern where I'm almost comfortable and then I need more. I have some, not ferociousness in me, but I have some velocity in me that at times demands that I do something about it. And I don't even know what that is from time to time. But when I get the feeling, I know I am best if I act on it, even if I don't want to.
The I think the thing that stops most people, and this is where I want to get your opinion on this, Doug, is how much work it's going to be. And I think this is the sticking point for, it was the sticking point for me for years, was I would look at a project or I'd look at a thing or something would click in my head and be like, I want to do that. But that's a lot of work. And to be fair, it usually is. But at the same time, it's usually less than what I thought it was at the time. And so I want to get your thought on this, Doug. I imagine in years of therapy with people, you have run into a lot of people who just didn't want to do the work. What do you think?
Yeah, I think first of all, address no disrespect received from Sean. I think I love your language. It's true. You sort of get here's your detailed orders and here's your frag order. I love your frag order approach. Like, listen, you just got to get out of that rut and just do a break. I think that's awesome. I think if everybody does that, I think we're working really well. If we do it to ourselves, we're doing awesome. And I think too that comes to your point, Chance, about what you're talking about, which is actually having that awareness. You need the awareness first in order to make the realization, it's not am I able, this whole disability thing has gone way out the window. It's really not about ability, it's about capacity. We have ability, but sometimes we just don't have the capacity. I'm too exhausted, I'm too burnt out, I'm too tired, I'm too whatever, which I need to recover from something else. It doesn't mean we're not going to be able to do it. So when I'm working with clients, recognizing, do they have capacity right now to go ahead and make this big move, or are they still in recovery? And here's the other thing that both of you kind of talked about as well. There's really nobody can make that determination but the individual themselves. Where am I right now? Am I being true and authentic with myself and saying that I'm not capable right now, or that I don't want to do this, or am I capable but I'm trepidatious. I don't know how to do that, and maybe I need some support with that. It's really a very individualistic kind of situation, place that you have to find yourself in order to decide where to go with it. I think everybody is different, and that's why there's no canned answer to that. But I think it's about capacity.
I love that. Sean, you got any thoughts?
Dude, that was amazing. I will add this, that capacity, who's defining the capacity? And I'm not challenging Doug. He probably already knows the answer. So I'm just going to throw this idea out there that if you walk into Doug's office and you've already run your capacity meter and you say that you're at 100% right now and you have no capacity for anything else, and you sit down next to a person that you've never met in your life and you start talking, and all of a sudden you realize that, hey, wait a sec, I thought I was at maximum capacity. But hanging out with this person right now for the last 10 minutes, I realized that capacity is multidimensional, or capacity is infinite, or capacity is whatever. Just hanging out with the right people, the right thing said at the right time by the right person, or in other words, no words said. You're just hanging out and feeling the vibe, getting the message, the energy, however you want to define it. If you're in the right place, sometimes your idea of what your capacity is can shift in a millisecond if you're paying attention, if you're tuning in. But if you walk into Doug's office and sit down next to him for the first time, or sit down next to a stranger who's hanging out with Doug at that time, and you enter with a closed mind, a fixed idea of what your capacity is, in other words, non-malleable, well, now you have your definition of what your capacity is. You defined it. You fixed it, and you are now stubbornly going to hang on to it. And so, how do you define capacity? Are you defining it? Are the people around you defining it? Is the universe defining it? These are good questions that you should chew on.
Mm. What
Hmm.
I like about that, Sean, though, is that you talked about capacity, and capacity has the ability to shift and change in the moment. It's very dynamic. And part of what you're talking about too is what are the constructs of the environment that allow me to recognize my capacity? Do I trust the people around me? Do I not trust the people around me? Do I need time because I've been hurt by people around me before to warm up and ensure that I can be safe and trusting the people around? All of these things. So it's very dynamic and it can change on a dime. And that's the thing that's beautiful about all of this stuff is if you give it the opportunity, if you maintain an open mindset like you're talking about, Sean, then you do have capacity to make those shifts and sort of go into those choice points that Chance talked about at the very beginning.
I do love this concept of capacity, and one of the greatest examples of finding how much capacity you actually have was the military. Like when you
Mm.
go through not only basic training, but you get into your later on stages of training, you start to get into the really in depth, finding your difference between tired and exhausted. Right, like you can push your body to where you're tired, and then you can push a tired body even farther than that, and then you can push a tired body even farther than that. You can get exhausted, and then continue to push your body from being exhausted. Most people don't get the opportunity to find that. Is that they spend a lot of time just going, and then they never really have any context to understand what that capacity really is. And like you said, the people that are around you, you may believe that they are trustworthy and they are not. And that comes into all kinds of different levels of trauma and stuff later on. Sean, you got any thoughts, anything?
Just that, when you're born, you don't understand your capacity. And so you can put yourself on a desert island, no other people around you, and start like throwing coconuts out into the ocean to see if you can throw coconuts to another country. Maybe that's how you're going to test your capacity all by yourself. You got to have some sort of metrics, some milestones, some challenges, some determination as to what can I do today versus what can I do yesterday. So there you are on your desert island figuring out your capacity in all sorts of different ways. Now, the other way that you can figure out your capacity is have like another 10 people on that desert island with you who are hard chargers. They will teach you your capacity either through observation or osmosis, or they will actively engage you in challenging you to set those milestones for yourself, not through demanding you test your capacity, but through lining up next to you, looking you in the eye, and saying, let's go. And then you get to understand your capacity. Now, how you best understand your capacity in that moment is based on your purpose, your why, your intention. And so if someone looks at you and says, let's go, and you just kind of slow saunter off that start line while everyone punches forward into their capacity, that's on you. You determined that your purpose in that moment was to maybe slack and idle it off the start line. But if it was super duper important, like save the planet or save all the coconuts on the island, you're going to fricking get after it. You're maybe going to be at the front of that charge. And so, capacity, you can teach it yourself, or it can be taught to you by those around you, but invariably, no matter what you're learning, it won't go that far unless your why, your purpose in that moment, your intention for why you're testing your capacity is locked in, if that makes sense.
I dig it.
Mm.
Doug, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, it sounds like we're sort of meshing up capacity with motivation as well, right? So it's the sort of the fuel, the driving force of locating your capacity, and you're also talking about that social engagement part, right? And I love the idea of like, hey, you got a group of guys and they're like, let's go, and they're looking you in the eye and say, we're doing this. There's also a difference too about can you feel the intention of those people around you? Are they saying that because they are working with you as a team, or are they saying that because uh, they don't know if you're able to engage with them or not, or they're not caring about you and they're just saying let's go because they have to go? It really depends on that social engagement, and that's going to depend on, of course, your experience too, right? I always talk to guys like when I work in groups. I'm like, we've all been part of two types of groups. We've been part of the group where you would fall on your sword for them. You couldn't wait to get back into the shit with them. All of these wonderful things. And there's also a group that we've all been part of where you felt sick just thinking about having to go to work to see them, or you are afraid to say anything in front of them because you didn't know if you were safe or not. And every time you're with a group, it's then your responsibility then to be curious and engage and say, what group do I want to be part of? What can I find in this group that will nourish me and fuel me so that I do go that extra mile that I didn't even think I had?
This goes back to the idea of deliberate acts, in that you have to deliberately seek those groups. Because, I mean, you might
Yeah.
luck into them, right? And like, sweet, I got a good crew. We're going to go do the thing. And yeah. And in which case, it's a great point in that for a group like that, that you would die for in a heartbeat, you will go into, your capacity for them will be exorbitant, right? You will die on your doorstep for them. But the other group, your capacity for them is going to be very, very limited, and that's going to affect everything else in your life as well, which is a interesting flip side to this. And I wanted to ask about this because I'm just genuinely curious from your guys' point of view. When you fail that test, when the group of them look at you and say, all right, let's go, and you don't, and you decide that your capacity is not enough, and you watch them walk off into the sunset, then what? Do you recover from that? Do you not? Do you just accept that, well, I guess I'm screwed now and forever live in shame? Or like, what would be your next step from that failure point? Sean, I'm going to start with you.
Well, first of all, I just want to establish, if we're talking about two groups, the group you want to be in, the group that you can't stand the smell of. So these groups exist throughout our life, on the daily, like all around us, nearly every minute. Now, we're categorizing as two extreme groups that are easy to categorize: want this, don't want that. But it's rarely that. It's often an intermix of the two, between the various characters, the various environment, the various tasks, the various responsibilities. All of these things, they all play into it. The simple equation of this and that, when you blend them together, becomes almost an infinitely possible soup of options. And so our job, of course, is to understand what we like and don't like. But then once we understand that, we don't get to cherry pick. I just want the stuff that I like. We actually have to engage in the stuff that we don't like. And so you can categorize things all day long and say, I want the perfect world with the perfect crew where we're doing the perfect things. And guess what? You'll never evolve as a human being in a way that now you're engaging with the crew that you don't want to. Now you're doing the things with the crew that, like, it sucks. And so you have to play in the extremes. You have to test your resolve. You have to see what kind of adversity you can absorb. You have to manage interpersonal relationships that you don't want to manage. This is how we grow our pattern. This is how we extend our footprint. I'm not talking about to impress others. I mean to impress ourselves. If we want to take care of this moment right now, we have to be quite variable in the moment. We have to be able to shift back and forth between the cool crew and the not cool crew. And so if you are so one-dimensional that you're only seeking positive outcomes with positive crews and positive wins and all the coconuts on the island, you're missing a large part of life, which is called, I'll loosely define it as beating the problem. Like, problems are all around us, and I feel that it's our job to face them, absorb them, understand them, flip it on its head, and make it now part of your win conditions, your rule set that you now get to manipulate in order to create better outcomes. So I don't want anyone to steer away from the uncool crew, because actually I'm asking you to steer maybe towards the uncool crew and start managing it a little bit better.
Dip your toes in the water a little bit, I guess. Doug, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I like where he's going with that too, and I think really it goes back to the thing that we've been talking about since the very beginning, which is developing that awareness. Just be aware, make conscious choices, make conscious decisions, and you need to have stable footing, but you also need to know in order to be able to have stable footing in a greater footprint, as Sean would say, you got to go on rocky terrain, and so you have to be able to test on rocky terrain in order to build a larger, more stable footprint. If you never do, you'll actually become less and less stable because your footprint will be that much smaller. It'll just continuously shrink. So I do agree with that. You need to be able to go out there and expand, but you also have to be aware enough to know what is nourishing you, what gets you motivated, what builds capacity before you do a deep dive unknowingly into something that isn't going to give you capacity, is actually going to cause more harm. So yeah, the only way we actually grow is by moving into some unstable territory, but we also need to make sure we have that stability too.
I was just thinking about the fact that you have to not only take in things that you don't like, but also do these things, and playing with balance and all this stuff is great. But when you will never find another person on this planet who agrees with you on everything. And therefore, if you only listen to things that you like, guess what? You're going to find yourself alone very quickly, right? Like, because no one else is going to agree with you on everything. And that's part of relationships. That's part of having not only good friends, is that they're going to do stuff that you've never tried before. And you're going to be like, well, what's that all about? And that's going to start a new realm. Maybe they take you to jujitsu and they start strangling the life out of you. And you're like, whoa. Okay, I need to try this out. Or maybe they take you rock climbing, or maybe they take you to a meditative retreat, or whatever it is. But to push your boundaries, I think is just a fantastic thing. But again, it takes deliberation. What do you got, Sean?
It does. It takes deliberation. And if you don't have any friends sitting in your living room right now as you're listening to this podcast, now what? Well, you got to challenge yourself. So whatever internal dialogue that you've fixed as your rote pattern, what you say to yourself every single day, like, I just don't have the capacity to be able to make my bed when I roll out of it, that's a lie. So challenge yourself on it. Flip that script. When you roll out of bed, actively tell yourself, of course, I've got the capacity to make my bed. Next thing I'll do, I'll brush my teeth. And so these little things that you have to actively deny the labeling that you may have put in place over the years and locked into a malfunctioning pattern, you've got to kind of challenge your patterns, your own personal patterns in your own personal head, without someone sitting across from you on the couch telling you to pattern interrupt yourself. It's easy to do. It costs you no energy. You can challenge yourself a million ways in a split second if you run the CPU fast enough. But at the very least, you can create a challenge in your head right now by flipping the script 180 degrees to whatever you were just thinking and trying it a different way. That is you pattern interrupting you. And where's the harm? Where's the damage? Where's the risk? There is no risk as long as you are calculated in your pattern interrupt. So as an example, if you're sitting on your couch right now thinking, I don't like going outside, I don't want you to flip the script so hard that you run right through your screen door right now out into traffic with just your underwear on. What I want you to do is be a little more calculated than that, but you've still got to push the pace. You literally have to pick up the pace on the pattern interrupt.
I dig it. I dig it. I want to talk a little bit about Doug, the work that you're doing with the nervous system, because I think a lot of us, one of the challenges, John, is that, to your point, we get excited about something and then we do run out the door and we run into traffic, and hopefully you're wearing underwear, but sometimes you're not. You're just like, sometimes it just goes all bad. And I find that, for me at least, it was always a nervous system reaction. It was like I have to do this right now. And then I would just go without any sort of thought or deliberate engagement. So I wanted to, Doug, you got the practice in this. Break it down for us a little bit in terms of retraining the nervous system. What do you got?
Yeah, it's difficult, but it's also easy if we're able to get into that mindset, which is what we've been talking about. I mean, we're trained in this very specific way to react all the time very quickly, because in the argument is it saves the lives of us and it saves the lives of others. And to be able to do anything different, then by virtue of that law would be then to compromise the lives of us and the lives of others. So there's a sort of a cultural shift or a cultural pull away from doing that. But ultimately, though, exactly what we've been talking about is when we develop a sense of awareness, get rid of the identity, the identity politics of this is what I'm supposed to be like because this is what I do for a living, and actually go into the human organism and start breaking down how am I being impacted? Am I is this fulfilling for me? Do I want to do something different? And if so, how much energy can I push towards that? It's going to feel uncomfortable, but if it feels uncomfortable, am I still stable enough to do it? And then allowing yourself to go into that discomfort. When we do, that discomfort no longer becomes uncomfortable. It actually becomes part of our stabilized platform. So we have the ability to do it, and often it takes something like this show or like this person beside you or like the person that you were connected with 3 months ago that you had coffee with, but now you decided to stay in your basement. Those people can give some insight and allow you to shift the way that you do things just a little bit, which then opens the door to shift to do things a little bit differently yet again. So it's a staged approach. It's not like running through the screen door in your underwear. It's actually about any tiny little thing that you do is different makes everything the opportunity to make everything different. You just have to grow on that and grow on that. So take those little wins, take those little hints of curiosity, make a tiny little shift in your day. I never say hello to anybody when I do go out there and get the milk and get the gas and get back home. Maybe I'll just say hi. When the cashier asks me how I'm doing, maybe I'll say, great, thanks. Hey, how's your day going? Just for shits and giggles and see what happens and see how that changes things from when I get a response. And you'll notice that things do change.
I do love that. We are going to watch the language, though. So,
Did it again.
Sean, you got any thoughts?
I love it. It's hard to break a pattern, isn't it?
Getting in trouble. It is. Yeah, I got to work on that.
That's why we put the rule in place. So one of the things that is interesting about pattern interrupts is it doesn't have to be a grand moment, just as Doug said. These are just tiny little wins that you can create, a new win for the day. And the moment that new win, a simple new win, an easy to achieve new win, the moment that you start stacking a few wins in the day, that win stacking, by the end of the day, you're feeling pretty good about the day. And so it would have been 2-3 years ago, I forget now, Chance, but I generally threw out a pattern interrupt to all the troops, and it was as simple as this. You know what? None of you smile enough. That's the challenge for today and moving forward. I want everyone to just frickin' start smiling. When you get a photo, don't be all frowny and all bummed out. Like, try to show your teeth. And so the smiling aspect, that was super freaking hard for a whole pile of people. And funnily enough, I don't know, Chance, I'm interested in your opinion on this, but it felt like to me that, kind of pushing that message, kind of running that pattern through the podcast, as it were, and certainly my social media, kind of challenging people to, dude, what is up with your no teeth face? Eventually, over about a year, people are picking up what we were putting down and people are starting to smile. And people are actually talking about how much better they felt because now they're a smiler rather than a frowner. And so I'm just going to throw it back to you, Chance. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was thinking that was the exact example I was thinking of as well, was the smiling show. And it affected everybody. I saw a lot of really awkward smiles and photos through the IG for a little while, but then I saw some really authentic smiles, and then I saw some people who were just having a great time with life in general, and they were just enjoying life more. One of the things that this is an old habit of mine from being in the country, is you wave at people when you're driving on a gravel road, right? Just a little 4 fingers. But I do that now pretty regularly. If I'm in traffic, not so much, but like on a single road with a single car, just a little 4-finger, what's up? It changes your day. It changes how you interact with the people around you. And I think also part of this is, we've talked about the self-awareness you have to recognize, oh man, I don't smile in any of my photos, or oh man, I don't wave to anybody, or I don't engage when with a cashier or anything like that. But as simple as making eye contact with people is another one that is a big one that'll help a lot of people. Now, I have a question for you guys on that, though, and I'm wondering specifically for you two. Can you think of anything like a small change that you made that made like big steps for your own lives? Because we talk about the collective quite a bit, but I want to hear from you guys as well. Can you think of something small that you changed that all of a sudden became a much bigger change than you thought it was going to be? Let's start with Sean. What do you got? You're muted.
Sorry. I want to use the podcast as the example, of course, because not only has it changed the way I look at the world and how I run my program and how I try to be a better person, a better example, a better version of myself, I suppose. I feel the responsibility to the troops, to anyone who's involved with the podcast, whether it's the guests or whether it's viewers or whether it's people in my own little mountain town that say, hey, that was a good show. I really enjoyed listening to Doug Allen today. I feel a certain level of responsibility to the bigger team around me. That's what makes the big changes for me. Like I can push my own pace. In fact, before I gave away my coaching company to start doing social media to try, because of my veteran friends had asked me to try to help with the mental health wellness across Canada and the suicide rates in the Canadian Armed Forces and all the good stuff. I was completely unaware of all of this stuff. And it was my veteran bros who said, dude, you've got to get into this game to try to be helpful. I didn't want this game. I didn't want this podcasting stuff. I didn't want any of it. But the moment that I decided to engage in it for the right reasons, the righteous reasons, it's made me push my pace. So before anyone contacted me to ask me to do this, I was already pushing my pace. I was up in my little Miyamoto Musashi cave doing all the karate chops and kicking all the trees down and writing all of the thoughts and thinking all of the things. I'd have been just fine without podcasting. But just fine ain't enough. What it has done is it's made me so much better by engaging in a larger cause, a larger purpose, a larger why than just my own little in a cave self. So my thought is this, that if you're looking to really move your needle, don't make it about your needle. Make it about everyone else's needle. And even if you don't think you're doing it well, if you are genuinely trying to be a good dude for everyone around you, I think you'll find that eventually you'll become a good dude whether you like it or not.
Bam. I love it. Doug, what do you think?
Yeah, I think well, one of the things that I found really important when I started working in mental health. I mean, I was a soldier when I started to do it. Um, what I felt I needed and what I started to do was to actually be very clear on how I was doing. And instead of modeling as a leader how I was taught to, which is like soldier on, drive the foot, just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, I modeled in a different way. I modeled in like, you know what, this is how I'm doing today. Uh, I might not be doing the best today, but I have capacity and I'm still here for you. And that means that we can all do that. We can all have bad days and still soldier on, as long as we're true and authentic with ourselves and being fully aware. And I think pushing forward that way and making that change actually enabled me to have a connection with, you know, the people that I work with, that they've said that, well, other clinicians don't get, like, they don't get me. We don't connect. They don't seem to get it. They're therapizing me or whatever. Where I just sort of sit in the pocket with them because I'm real. And so staying aware and just being real with someone else opens the door, gives them permission to be real. And it also means it's okay to not be on your best day, but the fact that you're doing it means that you're moving forward anyway.
Yeah, I love this. My thought was the thing that changed my whole concept of life was grace, in that, like, I can fail, I can screw it up royally, and cool, I'm going to try again tomorrow. I'm going to try to do it better. But that level of grace allowed me to progress, because I was stuck for a very long time. I mean, Sean can attest to this, of in that same similar rut that a lot of vets get into, of just like, as you guys say, drive the body. You know, we're gonna keep working until I can't work anymore. But the problem with that is that people need you to work. Like I have a family, I have a wife, I have kids, I have my community around me, I have the people that I'm trying to help with the podcast. And if I don't give myself grace to like fall on my face every once in a while, I'm going to be kind of screwed because I'm going to run myself dry. Sean, what do you got?
You have brought that up in the past, of course. In fact, we've done at least one or two podcasts on this topic, and it is the distinction between cutting yourself some grace and cutting yourself some slack. Having grace for yourself is a different thing than being a slacker. And so, if you're sitting on your couch and you don't feel like you've got the capacity right now to get off the couch, is it because you're daily giving yourself grace, or are you daily slacking? And so there is a big difference between giving yourself grace throughout the day versus just slacking off throughout the day. And if you haven't thought about those two words, though they do sound the same to some degree, they genuinely are not. And I think anyone who's listening and doesn't understand the distinction, you should tease out the details on whether it's slack or grace throughout the day.
That's a good point. I know for myself, I'll give my distinction between the two. Grace is it's a post action. Slack is a pre-action. So if I am looking at like I got to go teach, oh well, yeah, I'm really tired and I don't really want to go and my body really aches and I'm gonna cancel class today. That's slack. But if I go and I give what I can and I maybe don't teach the best class, that's grace. That's a post-action. Okay, that's my distinction between the two.
Yeah.
Nice.
And the follow on is, and you don't beat yourself up
Yes.
because you literally went in there and kicked the best ass that you could, gave it your all. And even if it isn't in comparison to the day before or the day after, you're, magnificent. It's you magnificent in that moment. It's you committing to the moment and doing your best. That to me is always a green light check mark. But if you're sitting at home and you think, my shoulder's a bit sore, the whole day's done. Well, that's slack. And so I think we all have the capacity to push into discomfort or unease or areas that we really don't want to uncover. We all have that capacity. It's whether we give ourselves grace after the fact or slack before the fact. So I love that.
Yeah. Doug, you got any thoughts?
No, I love that. I love the distinction with that too. And um, yeah, I think it comes back to awareness again. It's like, am I doing this deliberate act to get out of something? Is like I'm gonna benefit somehow, or am I going to actually give it my all, knowing that it's okay if I can't be perfect, but I'm still going to give it my all. I think is that again, nobody can determine that for us, and one of the hardest things to do is to be true to ourselves. It's so hard. We can lie to everybody else. We can put on a facade for everybody else, but ultimately it comes down to what's in our core. And I do it. I mean, sometimes I'll make excuses because I don't want to do something, but I also am fully aware. Look, I just made an excuse for myself. I'm taking a pass, and I have to also make amends for that. And if I don't make amends for that, then I'm not growing. But I've also recognized too when I'm at capacity and I need some grace. Like, you know what, I wasn't perfect at that. I'm less capacity than I want to be, and I can't do as good as I want to do right now. But that is significantly different than, you know what, I just don't feel like doing that right now, and I'm not going to. And I think that's okay sometimes, as long as you're prepared to pay for it and get back on that horse, as they say. So, yeah.
I just had an image of it's like a credit card. You got like, if I'm in a Slack today, I'm putting it on credit, and then I gotta pay it back later. Right? Just gotta tap my card
Yeah.
and call it a Slack. But
Yeah, well, like that is a great image, and I'm glad that popped into your head because you know what the logical chain follow-on of that is the moment that you swipe that, you're paying interest, baby.
Yeah, that's true.
18.6% or whatever it is now, 304% interest. And so you're always going to pay interest on that stuff. That second it starts accruing. And that interest only stops accumulating the moment that you address what you just did. I mean, that's the way it is. I want to just quickly, because I know we're coming up on time, and man, oh man, we needed 2 hours for this combo, not one. I want to point the finger at Doug right now because he was talking about how, when he sits down with someone and he starts communicating with a person, not that doesn't work for all people. Can't talk to all people in a way that works for all people. And so when you walk into a room, if I walked into a room and Doug was sitting there, I already knew, like when we were in the green room before we went live, it took me about 3 seconds to look Doug in the video eyes and feel his energy and think, this dude's cool as hell. And him and I would get along. And here's why, dot, dot, dot. And how do I know that? How do I know that in about 3 seconds, talking to a guy who's across the country in a video right now? It's because I have been paying attention to those moments throughout my entire life. Forming patterns isn't just about forming patterns on yourself. It is about forming patterns on people like Doug. And if you aren't paying attention in the milliseconds when you first mark one eyeballs on someone and try to feel their vibe, their energy, their frequency, their who they are at their core, their essence, you need to start thinking about doing that. I have been doing it pretty much my entire life. And whether you have empathic ability or not is neither here nor there. You will always have to start building this capacity to understand the person across from you in a split second if you can. And so I think that, if Doug is having success in his practice right now with veterans who are walking in and vibing with him and being able to meet him on the level that is required at that time, it's because Doug has done his work. Doug has worked on himself. Doug understands how this all works. And so, vibes are a result of the work you've done, not just within yourself, but in the world around you, so you understand how to combine those two things.
I could not say it better than myself. Doug, you got any thoughts?
I really appreciate that, and I really think it comes down to getting that vibe. There's two ways we can look at it. We can look at it for defense, but we can look at it through a curiosity lens. And we look at things through a curiosity lens, it gives us power. Then we can make choices and decisions around that that are better informed, that are better for us, and that can create better relationships. So yeah, moving forward with curiosity, not in a defensive mode, is a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And now I will say that you can use it in a defensive mode as well. And I think that's the first step, especially when you're first trying to figure out what's going on in your life and everything seems like it's a lot and you're trying to like defend yourself from the world at the same time, but also be curious. That is very possible. You can do that.
100%. Yeah. And that's where the curiosity enables that both. So if you're able to be curious, you're able to keep both in your view to make sure that you're being safe, but then also that you're not losing opportunities for growth.
Yeah, I could not say that better.
I'd be
Sean
remiss
can.
if I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this to anyone who's listening right now. To broadly categorize things, let's just pretend for a moment that however you're feeling the world, you're feeling it through the lens of a defensive posture. So as you're walking down the sidewalk to your bank or whatever the case is, you've thrown out your 360-degree radar as a defensive radar where you're probing for threats. Now, the moment that you start looking at the world as a threat, whether you believe it or not, I don't care what you say at this point, whether you believe this or not, the moment that you're probing defensively or threat-based, you're putting out a vibe that you may or may not be aware of. Now, if you're really aware of your vibe, and I'm talking like at a very granular level, you've been working on it for decades, you're very attuned to frequency, to energy, to vibe, maybe you can control the little peripheral sizzle that is attached to you viewing the world as a threat. But chances are you ain't. Because if you're looking at the world as a threat, you're giving off tertiary vibes that you probably aren't aware of. Now, I'll just simply say this without building this all out. If you want to get better at feeling the world, feeling vibe, sitting down in Doug's office and seeing if he's threat, no threat, if you lock eyes with him and think, is he a threat? Right now you're giving off a vibe of tertiary threat. And so you have to kind of like just relax. Just be who you are authentically as you're walking down the sidewalk and try to maintain a neutral vibe. And I don't mean like robotic. I mean like not prejudgmental. So as you're walking to the bank, just be cool as hell. Don't worry about the threats. Don't look for the unicorns. Just simply be yourself authentically, naturally, and try to feel the world neutrally for a while and see how that impacts your threat-o-meter.
That's a whole nother podcast in and of itself that we could go down the road of. I have no doubt that we could get deep into the hole of this one. I just have a couple comments here, and then we can do some final thoughts. Roadrunner 1422 on the Instagram side jumped in here. He said, "Hi guys," and he says, "Nice middle finger, Sean." Just a good one. And Dan C jumped in here a little bit earlier. He says he was a piglet as well. Micro Gold Oak Tokes, hasty and deliberate. That's a good distinction, and I really am glad we brought that up. Dan C also says many groups will also test your integrity. Those times are hard, but it reinforces your own core values. Another great point. And then he adds, doing bar walks in downtown Prince George. I learned that very quickly. Yes, indeed. You got to know your environment. Any thoughts? Anything still bubbling in the back of your brain, Doug? Anything at all?
There's lots I could dive into and pick apart, and Sean and I could talk for hours about dissecting these things. And very interesting. It all boils down to awareness and intention. How do we want to come into the world? How do we want to be able to navigate it so that we're the best selves that we can be? And are we pushing ourselves, or are we being complacent with ourselves?
Bam. I like it, Sean. Any final thoughts?
Wow, I'm going to try to keep it super high level so that it's just a general comment because, as Doug said, we could go super deep on this one. Don't maybe lock into this idea that you're shaping the world. The world shapes you. It is a cooperative thing back and forth. As you shape it, it shapes you. And if you think that you're the only one shaping everything, you're missing the boat. And if you also think that the world shapes you and you have no personal agency, you're missing the boat. What is actually happening is this. You and the world are cooperatively acting together. Now, where it all goes wrong is if you don't have the balance right. And the balance is only determined by you reading patterns and understanding the homeostasis of the moment. And so that takes time. It takes deliberate, observed time. And so if you haven't been playing with patterns and trying to understand who you are right now, this very moment in this conversation, think about that. Think about your balance on the minute-to-minute interactions between yourself and the world and yourself. It is a reciprocal relationship that is a two-way, constantly dynamically shifting highway, just like any highway. The traffic is constantly changing. It's your job to operate in that space so that you're creating positive outcomes rather than just simply observing things casually.
We're going to keep it super high level, right? Not going deep at all. I love it. I don't have much to add. There was a little story that clicked in my head when you guys were talking. I was watching a video online the other day, and it was when video games become work. And so a lot of multiplayer online role-playing games can become grinds. They become you have to go through these raids that take hours at a time, and there's very specific numbers that you have to work and all these things. Super fun. In a very facetious way, I said that's super fun. But you're the one playing the game. You get to choose whether you engage in life in that way, and like whether it becomes work or if you can keep it as enjoyable. It's fun, right? If I choose to do something, I want to choose to do it for the fun of it, for the enjoyment of it. And there's other parts of my life that I want to do for the work of it. So it's not just one or the other. Your patterns are going to be in all realms of your life, and you have to be able to select those patterns and which one are you going to work on right now in this moment. How do you develop it further? And that's all I got. So as we all continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see y'all next week. Chimo.
Chimo.
Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.